Rich, just first of all, just give us an insight or an idea as to how taxing the last 4 and a bit weeks have been.
On a lot of fronts, really, James. Obviously, we had a good win last time out. Then we had a bye week because of the semi-finals, but then COVID, so we got shut down for 10 days. And it brings its obvious disruptions and complications. First of all, we've had some guys that have had COVID who clearly haven't been well as well. They've struggled with it. We had a couple of players that have been pretty sick with it. Then you're back in. So as everybody knows, you have your 10 days down, then your 7 days return to play. So you can imagine training's been disrupted, disjointed. Throw in that a test match where we then have 5 guys out. We're supposed to play Friday this week, unable to raise a team. I understand Salford's frustration having to move the game because we're back on again Thursday. And obviously we've got a very, very congested schedule. Our England boys and our All-Stars boys could be subjected to sort of 5 games in the next 16 days. So yeah, it's not been smooth, James, but it's not just us, mate. I think the rest of the competition has had a lot to contend with over the last few weeks. OKR obviously been hit by COVID as well, in probably worse than what we have, to be fair. So yeah, it's been disrupted, disjointed, and we've had to be quite adaptable in what we've done on the training field when we've actually managed to get on there.
So the England and All-Stars guys, will they back up on Sunday?
We'll have to get through tonight. We do have a couple more coming off return to play today and tomorrow, and even Sunday. We are planning that they will back up, but obviously we've not named a team to our guys because we thought that was futile at the moment, James. With 2 middle front rowers, we need to see how much game time they play and how they come out of it. And obviously with a halfback, a hooker in there, I think Ash is on the bench from what I can gather. So, mate, it's a play it by ear job. But we've sort of had practice of these situations before last year, James. Turning up to games, not knowing what your team is. In the context of it, it's quite difficult, mate. It's quite difficult and a bit disappointing for us, given we felt we really turned a corner in our last game. But that's what it is, and I say I don't think any team is not going to be without disruption. And I think we've already seen that in Super League, when you take 3 or 4 of your best players out of any team, it can really hamper it. And we've had that to contend with pretty much all year, mate. So. Fingers crossed those guys enjoy the evening tonight, get through it with good performances, and the recovery is good enough that they can back up in a good fashion on Sunday.
And Tom Holroyd could feature for the first time this year. How happy will you be to see him back out there?
Yeah, really tough one on Tommy because he undoubtedly would have made the 17 for round 1. He had a very, very unfortunate injury, just sort of got his leg caught in the turf in a little bit of a collision, James, and caused a fracture in his leg. He were in tremendous shape, and obviously being off feet, that will have robbed him a little bit of where he was physically, and the up and down of a game and the collision is what he's going to have to get used to. But yeah, he's in with a shout of playing this week. He's a big, powerful specimen, and I think we've been on record before. We've got really high hopes for Tommy to develop and mature into a really strong front rower in this competition.
And this game on Sunday, how do you even try and pick that momentum back up from that Cas game for what will be 30 days previously? Do you have to ignore that and start again effectively?
Well, that's the challenge, JD. I think the positive part of it is the boys are itching to play. And despite losing some guys this week, we talked about everybody stepping up to the plate and sort of, rather than expecting our England boys to come in and have the some of our strongest players have the impact on the team, we want to be able to carry them a little bit this week and set that challenge down to our guys. So while we might have lost the physical momentum and obviously the cohesion we had in our last game, we're going to have to work really hard to find that. We've been unable to establish it on the training field this week just because of the personnel that we've had missing. But mentally, mate, they're in a good place. They've really, we've still got that momentum with us. Despite a a tricky start to the season and having plenty thrown at us. The boys still see some great opportunities for us this season moving forward. So it's not like I've said this before, it's not like I'm dealing with the team searching for its next performance or next win. Quite the opposite. I've got a pretty excited bunch of guys.
What do you think you'll get from Salford?
Again, there's a little bit of unknown. They've changed the team around. I've looked at the 21-man squad today, and it's difficult to predict who'll play in the halves. They got a couple of guys that'll have to back up. They've got a suspension in there, so trying to name their team is difficult. And in terms of preparation, James, you can imagine the difficulties of having 10 days off, having 5 internationals out of your team, and having COVID issues. This week, mate, we've just got to make it about ourselves. And that's no disrespect to Salford one little bit. We can't predict their team. We don't really know our team at the moment. So we've got to make it about doing what we do and doing it well. And the sole focus of our prep this week has purely been about us.
You've come through this outbreak. Huddersfield have come through theirs. Hull KR are right in the middle of one at the moment. Do you have any sort of deeper, broader concerns of where this season might actually be heading right now?
I said a few weeks ago, didn't I, when we started to get them, and I think it might have been a journalist. Can you do any more? Should you be protecting your players more? Well, what sort of a statement is that, given what's happening in the country? The variant seems to be a lot more transmittable, and it ripped through our place, and it's clearly ripped through OKR's place like wildfire. I'm not a sage expert, James, but I would imagine we're going to see some more impact. I think last year when we got through the fixtures like we did, I think for the good of the game, we just got out there, rolled the sleeves up, and got on with it. I think there's almost a little bit of anxiety around, it's not happening again, is it, around at this moment? But if it does, we got to combat it however we can. And we've said for a while, you're going to have to be adaptable. And that's certainly a case for us this week. We're going to be adaptable and face whatever situation and challenges get thrown up. Obviously, there's a lot of protocols in place, be that the league table in percentages, protocols around track and trace and around blokes that have got COVID or potentially long COVID. So first and foremost, I think the welfare of everybody in clubs is paramount. But I think it's one of them, James. We might have to do what we did last year, which is you play it on the run a little bit. Yeah, it could cause disruption, mate. And I think we all saw last year, ourselves included, there's times when the integrity of the competition and how it's run does come into question. But I think we're probably a little bit better prepared for that this year than where we were last year.
Thank you, Rich. Good luck on Sunday.
Thanks, mate.
Hi, Rich. How you doing?
Good, mate. Thank you.
Excellent. Could you just get a general injury update? Because we know that there's international call-ups and whatever else and COVID. How are you actually looking injury-wise at the minute?
The biggest effect is COVID, mate. That's if there's some names missing off our team sheet this week, I don't think from our last game in terms of too many injuries. I think the bulk of them are COVID related, mate. Injury wise, Holroyd is back. Bodine Thompson is back, fit and available again. Cameron Smith is very close, probably not this week, but a chance for next week with his hamstring. So there's a little bit of positive news on that front for us, mate, and we will have another couple of names back in that are missing this week because their return to play expires, they hit that date, just shortly after the weekend. So again, we could have a few more guys back available to us for what is going to be what's going to be a hell of a period, to be honest. It's a very, very difficult period for the guys that have got to back up from Friday night. But I think right across the competition, the scheduling of this fixture not to be on a standalone weekend is disappointing. Understand everybody concerns all the stakeholders and decision makers understand everybody's position on it. But we are heading into a very, very congested and demanding period for our players.
How difficult was it to push the game back rather than, because I do think you're in a position where you could have applied to have this game postponed and rearranged and not even have to play this weekend given the rules, but did that ever come into your thinking? Did it effectively just kick the can down the road if you did that?
Well, yeah, it does. Look, we've had St Helens and who else? Catalan postponed. I think there's been some people outside our camp looking in and saying, do they really need to postpone them games? We couldn't get a team. Long and short of it, with the injuries and COVIDs, we couldn't get a team. So this week, postponing it, you are kicking the problem down the road to a later date. If you start looking at the calendar and fixture list and where we could fit it in, you start looking, you're effectively playing 3 games a week almost for the rest of the season, and we've already got some catch-up games. So we just said, look, Salford obviously wanted to keep the game Friday, which we totally understand. They play Thursday. We could not have fulfilled the fixture without withdrawing all our players from this international game. We didn't want to do that. I am going to say our boys were really excited, first of all, about going to play for England, which quite rightly they should be. But the boys were excited about going playing for the All-Stars too. So we didn't want to deny them that, but we could not have fielded a team had this fixture been on Friday, and we feel through no fault of our own, through international call-ups and obviously COVID. It's tough to back it up. It could cause us some problems, but it'll only cause us problems further down the road, Matt, if we don't try and get it played now.
One of the criticisms from people from the outside are going, well, what about all these academy players that are coming through? But are we at a point where you didn't even have players within the academy, and I don't know if they're expecting you to play 15, 16, or whatever?
Well, so Matt, we've had a sticky start to the season with injuries and then with COVID. So we're going to play our academy team for a couple of games, and we need to win, mate. We need to win to try and get back up in playoffs. So that's not a case of we can't play them because we win. Don't forget, our best academy players and our most physically developed academy players are already in our team. Morgan Gannon has played the last 3-4 games. Levi's up with us. Corey Hall's with us. All our best young kids are with us anyway. So to dip into the academy where these guys have had 18 months off, right? Most of our top-end academy players, I think we may well have one top-end academy players. We let go and went to other clubs, and we took what we thought the best ones up with us. So our academy players basically are 17-year-old on the back of 18 months off with 2 or 3 games under the belt. I think that's unfair and unrealistic to think we're going to chock our team full of 17-year-olds to fulfil a fixture. I think that's ridiculous, mate, to think we're going to do that. From a welfare perspective, from the integrity of the competition, from our ambition as a club, why would we do that when the rules are permitted that you take this course of action? I think that is unrealistic to think that as a club we're gonna, we're gonna do that for so many games.
I was going to say, surely there's a welfare element to it that would make it unsafe as well.
Well, welfare's all right for people when it suits, isn't it? That's anybody. Everybody can sort of look at welfare, and welfare don't matter. Well, do you know what? Put 6 or 7 17-year-olds in your team and go and play St Helens. You know what I mean? Is that right from a welfare perspective? Is that what we want to see in the game? And that's why, as a game, I guess that's the frustrating thing. This England game should be a standalone game. Sean Wayne should have these players for a week to be able to prepare for a World Cup. And I said this in the week, I think, to Pete Smith. I watched Brian Carney's interview with Ralph Rimmer, and quite rightly, Ralph Rimmer used beating Australia as a justification for culling 3 academies. Whether that's right or wrong, I don't want to get into that debate now. All right, but Ralph, it's all about beating Australia. I totally agree. So if it's all about beating Australia and getting the best competition, the highest standard of domestic competition we can out, well, putting a test match in the middle of a Super League weekend before we have 3 games in 7 days, I don't think is the way that you're going to prepare our elite players to play in a World Cup at the end of the year. I think it's, again, unrealistic to think that. So, fielding academy teams for a couple of fixtures, and then, do you know what, next thing, Leeds performing badly this year, and do you get what I'm saying, Matt, here? You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, mate.
Just finally, obviously, you've had a little bit of time not being able to train and what have you. Have you been able to do anything productive as a club in terms of recruitment, retention, any other business, anything like that? Has that been able to happen?
It's just ongoing, mate. It's just ongoing. Yeah, we work in progress. I think, like a lot of people at this stage of the year, yeah, we're obviously chatting to some players. We know some positions that we need to fill, and we're active behind the scenes at this moment in time.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Rich, just ask you a really quick one, mate. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I was going to say, just on a practical note, how grueling is it to play 2 games in 3 days? I know Matt Pryor's already said that he's up for playing on Sunday. But obviously, these are all your key men, aren't they? Like your Gales, your Pryor, Aledzki, Hanley, Leeming. How do you sort of gauge how dangerous it is to field those lads on Sunday? Is it on game time, or how do you test or sort of measure?
We'll get them in. Obviously, look, we all get inundated with data, Ross, if you like. So we'll be fully aware of what these guys go through on a Friday night. But I think, a tried and trusted method is they're experienced international players that know their own body, and we'll get some feedback from those guys, mate, on how they're feeling, what the energy levels are. We'll do our utmost, and I know England are doing their utmost to try and recover them post game. We'll obviously try and aid the recovery. We're going into a game really with these guys not having prepared at all for it, but with the trust that they know how to play rugby. They're international players. They will have been in situations quite often in their careers where they've had to back up. Last year, for instance, Ross, I think the challenge, I was going to say damage, but I'll use the word challenge, will be in 2 or 3 weeks' time, and that'll be throughout the competition, mate.
Yeah, it's just going to absolutely ridiculously grueling period coming up. So you got to look even further ahead than this week, haven't you, to the coming games that you've got?
Sure, mate. So everybody can put their academy teams in. How about that for a suggestion? Let's all play as academy teams for a couple of weeks and see what happens then. It is, Ross. It's it's questionable the way the scheduling is very, very questionable, mate. I think a suggestion that might have come from a journalist. Well, we've got a couple of Luke fixtures in there. Could have had a standalone weekend and then a Luke fixture. Even taking out COVID, I wouldn't say a Luke fixture to pick up any COVID games, but even taking out COVID, Ross, it's very demanding for the guys. Very, very demanding.
Just a final one, please, Rich. Do you think the way this season's panning out in terms of this fixture congestion, do you think that could hamper the national team's chances at the World Cup? Because we've only got this one game and it's being played on a Super League weekend. What's your take on that?
Well, I hope not, but I would say it's a fair chance of impacting on the elite players. We're taking 17 English players out, and probably another 3 that are playing in the Exiles as well, in the All-Stars team. I think it will, mate, especially for the successful teams that St Helens are already at Wembley, and the teams that make the top 6 and play playoffs and get to grand finals. Yeah, your elite players are going to be playing a lot of games in a short period of time, unless the clubs get opportunity to rest them, and that's where. That's been a little bit different for us this year, Ross, because we did have the numbers last year. We were very, very fortunate that I think in 3 games on our cup run in, and even 1 game after it, we could field, a pretty much fully changed team. Not quite, but pretty much fully changed team. Unfortunately, mate, we're not going to have that luxury this year because of long-term injuries. So that'll be down to the club, mate, in if they got opportunity to rest their elite players. I'm sure they will. I'm sure that there might be little windows of opportunity for them to do that. And I know it's something that if we could, we would certainly look at, but we may not have that luxury, mate. We may not have that luxury. I think it's, as I say, mate, I think we can all put a brave face on it and say we'll battle through it. But the bottom line is, playing a couple of months as congested as it is, it will have an impact, as we saw at the back end of last year, mate.
Yeah. That's great. Thanks, Rich. Cheers.
No worries.
Hi, Rich.
Hey, Pete.
Just wondering, how many training sessions have you actually been able to have for Sunday's game? Have you had any with the team that's likely to play?
No, none whatsoever. None whatsoever. Our England guys have been away. They came in and did some really light skills on Monday, but we lost Matty and Cruz went on Monday, so we didn't see them Monday. And then don't forget, Pete, we had 10 days off too. So how we train them, we had to train them accordingly on the fact that we've been down for 10 days. But no, we've had no training as a team whatsoever. We've tried to do it in units and small parts and scenarios in the hope that when we get to the big picture stuff, our guys in 4 weeks haven't forgot how to play. But yeah, clearly we're missing our halfback as well. Obviously, there's a couple of names not named on our team sheet around the COVID, which impacts us in certain positions. So, no, we haven't been able to do anything like we would a normal week. But I will say, boys have bought into that and really had a good week despite the quite obvious disruptions.
Thanks, Rich.
Ciao, mate.
Hi, Rich. Okay, just
Thank you.
a quick one from me.
Yep.
How many people are we talking, or how many bodies are we talking that you would have today if the game was going to be played, without the internationals?
Well, with 5 in that game, still 3 down with COVID. 5 in that game. I worked out. Had the game been on Friday, something like 16 missing, something like that. But we've got 5 in the All Stars game. We've got another 3 that are still, I think, returned to play with COVID, and then obviously Walker, Newman, Rob Louis, Callum McClelland still injured. So yeah, close to 50% of our squad, and a sizable chunk of salary cap as well.
Yeah. So do you think that, given obviously these games are going to get called off, or some games might not be played because of COVID eventually, do you think that the win percentage is the fairest way to go about it?
I think it's hard to get a foolproof way of being fair, if I'm honest. I thought the back end of the year, they came to I thought what were a pretty palatable solution, by making it a 6, and even a couple, even teams that got in there that hadn't played the required games. I thought common sense prevailed. I think it's very hard. I think it's a very hard situation. We've got to see what COVID does. It's hitting us at the moment, but if it continues to hit us, then yeah, we're clearly going to have some more disruption. I think the common sense is going to come around squeezing the games in. I think if we think everybody's going to play every 3 days for the rest of the competition, then I think that's unrealistic. So that's where your win percentage does come in. I think the bigger question for me in terms of the win percentage, I think we've all got to cop a bit of that and wear it. And it might be fair for some teams and a little bit unfair for others. I think where the bigger conundrum will come will be around the other end of the table. On if it's a year where we've still got relegation, and I think it's a year where if Toulouse, because of travel and they're getting games called off, if they only end up playing 12 or 13 games, and then the bottom of our competition gets heavily affected by the points percentage of new players, I think you'll probably find there's going to be a bigger argument there than to what's going on at the top end of the table. But fingers crossed we don't get to that, and we have enough time to get a meaningful and viable competition. The other one, I guess, is around the World Cup. Is if it starts to get affected out, what does that look like? So fingers crossed. I think we've got to think pretty positively at the moment and hope that we're getting the worst out of the way now.